Hello there. Today I'm going to teach you how to chain using the double crochet stitch. I am using Red Heart Super Saver yarn. If you look on the back, it recommends the US I9 crochet hook, so that is what I'm going to be using. We're going to start out by making a slip knot. If you are not familiar with how to create a slip knot, I will link the video up in the right hand corner so that you can master that technique before you start learning the double crochet stitch. But if you know how, we're just going to chain, and we are going to chain 16. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. When you have 16 stitches on your chain, count down 2 stitches from where your hook is. So 1, 2, then you're going to yarn over your crochet hook, and you're going to go into that 3rd stitch on your chain. You want to go directly in the center. There are 3 strings in each chain. You have your top stitch, a middle stitch, and this bottom stitch. So what you want to do is you want to go directly in the center. So you'll have 2 strings on top of your hook. It looks like a V. And then you will have 1 on the bottom. You want to hook your yarn and pull it through that center of that stitch. Now you have 3 loops on your hook. So you're going to yarn over, you're going to pull through the first 2 loops. Now you have 2 loops left on your stitch. You're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull through those 2 loops. So we're just going to continue this. We're going to yarn over, go into this next stitch, making sure we go directly through the center of that stitch. Then we are going to yarn over and pull it through those 2 loops, yarn over, and then pull it through those last 2 loops. So you want to yarn over, go into the next stitch, making sure you go right through the center, pull the yarn through, yarn over, go through the first 2 loops, yarn over, and go through the second set of 2 loops. You want to yarn over again. Do not forget to yarn over before you go into that next stitch. If you do, it will not work. So you want to yarn over and pull through these first 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the second set. Now, if at any time you need to adjust your yarn, you can do that. You want to make sure that your tension is consistent. How I do that is I wrap the yarn around my middle finger, then I place it over my top of my index finger. This gives me really good tension. Your tension comes from this yarn right here that you're using to create your stitch. I'll just keep it the same tightness as I did on all the other stitches, making sure that my tension stays consistent. That is the main thing when it comes to making a half double crochet or a double crochet that we are making here. These stitches require very good consistent tension. If you don't know how to make a half double crochet stitch, I will link it to the end of this video, and I will teach you how to make that stitch. It is very similar to the double crochet stitch. Let's continue working this double crochet stitch, going into the next stitch, yarning over, pulling through the first 2 loops, yarning over, pulling through the last 2 loops. If you notice, I like to take my thumbnail and kind of just hold down on this chain. Working the chain, this is the hardest row to work as you're starting. So just be patient and just take it slow and just keep working across. because this will be the hardest one that we work. The next row is so much easier. So when you get to this last stitch, you want to make sure that you have 2 stitches on top and 1 on the bottom. It is probably the harder stitch to go into, so you want to take your time there. And so now we have a very straight edge right here on our end. You want to count your stitch work now. It is very important that you count at the end of each row. So let's count our stitches. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Now when we chained, we did 16, but if you remember, we counted 2 stitches over and went into that 3rd stitch. So your stitch count should be 2 less than whatever you started chaining with. You do not count these 2 stitches here on the side. These are where we skipped those 2 stitches. So you don't count those. Where you count is this, where you see the V laying on the top. That is your first stitch. This over here is not your first stitch. That is part of your chain 2 that we're fixing to do before we turn our work. So you want to make sure that you're only counting the V's that are laying flat and across the top. So whenever you count, you want to count starting here, not here. I hope that that makes sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain 2, and then we are going to turn our work. So I just flip it with my thumb, adjust your tension. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into this first stitch right here, because what we want is a very straight edge here on the side. So we're going to yarn over. We're going to go into this very first stitch. So you will have your V laying on top of your crochet hook. If you don't, just pull your hook out. Make sure that you go right here in that center hole. Pull your yarn through. Now you have the 3 loops again. You will yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, and pull through the last 2. So you can see that we have a nice starting edge here. So what we will do is we will yarn over, go into this next stitch, pull it through, yarn over, pull it through the first 2, yarn over, and pull it through the last 2. Now you will notice when you're working double crochet, you do have some gaps here in your stitches. Now there is a way that you can avoid that, and I will show you what you do. You just go through this ending loop here on your last stitch into your chain, then you pull it through, and you're using your stitch on your double crochet instead of yarning over. And then you just yarn over and pull through, and it creates a really nice tight double crochet. But we are going to just keep working the simple crochet with the gap in it. So I'm going to rip out my work and just yarn over, go back through, yarn over, pull it through the 2, yarn over, pull it through the 2. Sometimes you will not care if there's a gap, and other times you may care if there is a gap. In this instance, I want to show you just what a regular double crochet looks like, and it will have those gaps in it. Sometimes if you're working something where you don't want to have gaps, you'll know how to get rid of those. So I just wanted to show you that technique. We're just going to keep working across, making sure that our tension is the same. If you get where your yarn kind of balls up on you, just pull it, straighten it out. Tension is key here. You don't want your stitches too tight and you don't want them too loose. It's kind of like Goldilocks. You want it just right. If you have it too tight, your chain will not lay flat. If you have it too loose, then your work is not going to be uniform. So you just want to make sure that your tension is good all the way across. And if this takes you, chaining and working across your chain multiple times, maybe even ripping out your work, just learning how to control your tension is very important before you start making a blanket or anything. Because what's going to happen is you're going to be doing all of these rows. Blankets can have 50, 100, 150, however wide you're wanting your blanket to be. You're going to do all of that work, and then your stitches are going to not look good. Your edges are not going to line up, and you're going to feel really frustrated. And so it is more beneficial to do a small swatch like this and just really learn how to keep your tension uniform, how to get each stitch to look the same as you work across. Learn how to get those nice edges before you take all the time to create a huge project and it not turn out the way that you want. So we're going to chain 2. We're going to turn our work, yarn over, and we're going to go into that very first stitch. Yarn over and pull it through. Yarn over and pull it through. And so we're just going to keep working. And as you can see, our edge is completely straight and lined up here. And that's what you're looking for. You don't want any lumps and bumps in the edge of your work. If you are getting that, you did one of two things. You either, when you chained and turned, you did not go into that first stitch, or you missed a stitch somewhere. So one thing that is beneficial is to count. How we counted when we did our first row to make sure that we had 2 less than our original chain. You want to keep doing that, and you can do that by counting as you work across. You don't want to count these on your chain 2 though. You only want to count the stitches that are laying flat on the top. These flat stitches are what you count. So your first stitch you would count is right here. So we have 4 stitches already worked on this. So we can just count as we work across. So we'll say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. If you don't like to count as you work across, you can always just stop and count. You remember though, you got to count only the stitches where the V is on the very top. You do not count your chain 2 over here on the side. If you do, your stitch count's going to get all off and your work is not going to be uniform. So just counting across, you go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. But as you can see, the edge is straight, and that's what you want to look for. And even with your chain 2, you want to make sure that those stitches are staying tight, especially if you are working a blanket. You do not want to put all that work into it and then it not have uniform edges. So on each side you can see that the edges are completely straight, and that's what you're looking for. Now this here, if you're making a blanket or any time that you're chaining, you will weave in the ends using a needle, and you would go through these 2 loops back here. Put your yarn through there. Let me pull this. Anytime you stop, you always want to pull your yarn up so that your work will not come undone. And you can always put a stitch marker here in where you've pulled. That way, if for some reason this gets pulled, do you see that? Your stitch marker will not allow that stitch to come undone. But to weave in your ends, what you would do is you would come through these 2 loops. Looks like a V right here. You'd come through here, and then you'd pick up these next 2, and you just want to work right along your starting chain, and you just weave it through a few stitches, and then you just pull it. And then you grab it and make sure that it doesn't deform your chain edge at all. And then you would just cut this. And then your ends are weaved in. And then you can just pull on that stitch marker and it'll pull up. You can put your hook back in, and then you can continue to chain 2, turn, and keep working. I hope that this tutorial has helped you learn how to do the double crochet stitch. When you are done working as many rows as you want, what you will do is you need to finish off your work, so you will not do any chaining at the end on your last row that you're going to work. What you would do is just yarn over your hook, pull it through. You would cut your working yarn tail that is connected to your yarn. I'm not going to cut mine, but you would cut it, and then you would just pull this end all the way through, and it would look similar to your starting yarn tail. And then you would do the exact same thing. You would just weave it into the ends, and your work would be secured and it would not unravel. I hope that this tutorial has helped you not only with learning how to do a double crochet stitch, but also how to get uniform straight edges and how to create a double crochet stitch without the gap in between the stitches, if that is what you are looking for. If you are interested in learning how to do the treble stitch, I will teach you how to do that. Just click on the next video.